Hello, everybody. Welcome. My name is Kate Sanka. I'm the executive director here at Teach Access, and I'm thrilled to be joined by some of my favorite people doing work in the accessibility space, industry experts, accessibility experts, um, working in these spaces for many years, doing incredible work. And we have them here today. They're very kind to take time out of their busy schedules to support us and support all of you faculty in why we should be teaching accessibility and the exciting ways that this work is happening in industry. So the way this will go, we've got four panelists here today. I'll have them first introduce themselves, and then we have some questions to get through. My goal is for this to feel conversational as much as possible, recognizing people will want to answer, and then if anyone feels they want to build off of what someone shares, you are very welcome to do that. So the first sort of official question we have here is to briefly introduce yourself and just describe your role or experience in accessibility work. Of course, we have some more questions we'll get into that can go deeper into that work, but just sort of a high level, who are you, where do you work, and what does that work look like? So with that, I'd love for Kelsey to start us off here.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. I'm Kelsey. I currently work for an organization called ADP, and I work within the Global Technology Organization. And in that work, I'm focused on building our accessibility team and function, which is very much an enablement function. And we're focused on embedding inclusive design and accessible design into all ADP systems. So we are very intersectional in our work, and often that means even beyond our global product organization and into things like marketing, legal, procurement, etc. And the goal is to shift accessibility from a kind of an after the fact fix into from the beginning, shifting left continuously and at scale. And especially lately, we're really focused on shaping how accessibility shows up in AI agent behavior, decision making, and observability so that we don't lose inclusion and accessibility as our systems become more autonomous.
Thank you, Kelsey. This is Kate again. And let me go to Fred. How about Fred?
All right. Hi, my name is Fred Moltz. I am the Chief Accessibility Officer here at Verizon. Um, been with the company for 26 years in very different roles, from finance to IT to marketing to our digital PMO team. And then the last 11 years, having the honor and the privilege to be creating our accessibility program from the ground up. So really excited to be here to talk about accessibility, how it kind of impacts the corporate world, but also how those efforts really lead into everyday life around every industry.
Thank you so much, Fred. And Nandita, over to you, please.
Hi everyone. I'm Nandita Gupta, petite Indian woman, long black hair, wearing glasses today. I am a senior product manager leading accessibility for WebEx here at Cisco. And I also lead the language AI experiences. So anything that sits at the intersection of how do we really empower all our users who may speak multiple languages to still collaborate and have an authentic experience when they're part of video conferencing calls. If you asked me if this is what I would be doing 15 years ago, I would have laughed and said, no, I'm going to go build robots. So that's really my background. I started out as an electrical engineer within robotics and human robot interaction, which eventually then morphed into human machine interaction. So, really making the lives of folks who work within manufacturing and frontline workers more easier and accessible. And made a pivot in 2019, quit my job, went back to school, got my master's in human-centered computing, and with a focus in accessibility at Georgia Tech. And that has been my career shift, specifically in an accessibility role. So since then, I've been at Microsoft and now at Cisco. So very intersectional journey, and personally, really, really thankful to be here, with Teach Access. And I learned about Teach Access from my mentor at Georgia Tech. So that was the first time I heard about it. And so I have personally benefited from learning about accessibility during my grad program. Never learned about it in undergrad. I didn't even know this was a field, that this is something I need to think about. But during grad school, it was a game changer to really just understand that, oh, there are actual standards. This isn't just nice to have. And then these are the different ways you can actually operationalize it. So for me, I've definitely taken, that teaching to heart, and very, very, very excited to be here.
Ms. Kate. Nandita, thank you for sharing that. I love hearing that. And Kurt, over to you.
There, Kurt Yobst. I'm from Pennsylvania. I am really excited to be on this panel of esteemed professionals who actually also happen to be friends. So this is fantastic. I'm the co-founder and global president of the Neuroforce BRG at Salesforce, the Neurodiversity Business Resource Group. My day job is that I'm also a customer accessibility advisory lead in the Office of Accessibility at Salesforce. And oddly, I used to be a public school teacher for many years. So currently I'm a public speaker and advocate, and my role is really to foster customer relationships, ensuring that they're getting the most from Salesforce on their accessibility journey. So thanks for having me.
Thank you, Kurt, and thank you, everyone. I always love hearing those, hearing stories of, well, I started doing this, and then somehow I ended up here, and now I'm doing this. I feel like that's such a common thread that we see in a lot of us working in accessibility spaces. We started doing this, and then here we are. And I think, Kelsey, you mentioned intersectionality. Nandita, you did as well, that intersectional work and interdisciplinary work. And I think that's such an important part of this. So with that, let us head to the next question here. So the question is, in your view, what separates, quote, good accessibility from, quote, poor accessibility in practice? So I'll let you sit with that for a moment. And then when ready, maybe we'll go reverse order. So Kurt, we'll go to you first when you're ready with that one.
Sure. So right off the bat, accessibility without getting people with disabilities involved is just not good accessibility, flat out. Have we involved them in the whole process? There's a common statement in the disability space: nothing about us without us. You might have picked this up, but I myself am unapologetically autistic, and I use my personal experiences, my lived experiences, along with my professional experiences to make sure that accessibility is embedded in everything we do at Salesforce. And what's interesting about accessibility is, if you're using a screen reader, if you're building with a screen reader without allowing a visually impaired user to complete a task, it's good, but how many steps is it taking? Are we using a touchscreen system for nonverbal communication, but it's overwhelming to the user and it's not accessible? And the issue here is that if we just focus on one disability without thinking about the myriad of human differences, is it truly accessible? The answer is no. So it's really all about making sure that we have people with disabilities involved throughout the whole process. B, that we're thinking about all of the myriad of differences, and C, are we really evaluating what is good, or are we just looking at compliance? Because if we're just focusing on compliance, we're kind of at the floor. We're not aiming for the ceiling.
This is Kate. Yeah, Kurt, thank you. I think such an important answer and an important thing for us to make sure that we continue to center is the human aspect of this. Nandita, we'll go to you and see what you would like to share on this question.
I feel like it's going to be a +1 to everything on this panel, everyone who says whatever they say on this panel. I'll give actually a food analogy. I'm a huge foodie. To me, poor accessibility is bolted on. So, if I'm making a delicious bowl of chicken curry, I'm not going to be sprinkling the spices on top. Be like, oh yeah, it's done. This is great, right? I'm going to make sure that it's going to be baked in. It's going to be simmered. It's part of the architecture from day one. So to me, poor accessibility is reactive. Because what happens is sometimes you're going to run this audit. You're like, oh my God, this customer's asking for this. Let me quickly run this audit. Cool, I'm done. What happens in 3 months? What happens in 6 months? What happens when there's a framework upgrade, right? And things change. What happens? Does it make it? Is someone owning it? Does it still survive? If I ran an audit in 6 months, what would happen? How many issues would I find? And to me, that is really telling about not just whether it's baked in, but how well it's baked in. What are ways in which it has intentionally survived any kind of audits and product updates. And I want to touch on AI a little bit here because I know this is top of mind for everyone. But AI could potentially make something worse by being very confident, right? Like if you're using it, and of course, we use AI in all our different spaces, but we talk about take the advice with a grain of salt. You need to make sure you're running evals. Need to make sure you're running your model evals. You need to make sure you're looking at ways in which it could intentionally fail because it's input versus output, right? If you haven't thought about it from the very beginning and taking what Kurt said, but then applying that to the AI era, right? If your data sets don't include disabled voices, then the output is going to show that. So making sure that it's intentional and it's not bolted on, but it's truly fundamentally architectural is really, really important.
This is Kate. Nandita, thank you for that answer. Now you have me thinking about what I'll be having for dinner tonight. I highly encourage other food analogies if others have them. But again, I really appreciate that perspective. And I agree, we'll probably have a lot of plus ones, like you said, but excited to hear from Fred on this one now.
Well, you're going to have to shut me down when I go too long because this is my favorite topic when we start talking about what makes a good or bad accessibility program practice. Let me start off saying, if you're thinking about accessibility, you're already on the right track, so you're already good. But you got to be intentional about it. And for every organization, every company out there, it's going to be different. There is not one single playbook for any one company that says this is how you do it. It's really taking best practices and applying them to your culture, to your operations, and to your overall mindset, whether it's with a designer, a developer, a finance person, marketing person, customer service. I can go on and on and on. The idea is accessibility really is surrounding all of those roles. And being at Verizon for the last 26 years, being in a number of these roles that we just talked about, I didn't realize it during those times, but I realize it now. Accessibility is part of all those roles that I've previously been part of here at Verizon, for example. But let's talk about some of the simple scenarios here to really frame this up. There are invisible disabilities. There are people who have a disability that don't even realize they have a disability. There are people with a disability that do not want to disclose it because they have fear of stigmatization. That is their right. Let's be very clear, that is their right. And remember, treat every person as a human being. So I'm sitting here today, I have a disability. I have no feeling in my fingertips. I have no feeling, I lose feeling with my left leg. I still do my job. I do my job very, very well. And in some cases, I do it even better because I have additional insights. My point of saying this is you just never know. So when you are building, creating, you want to create for everyone. We know in the United States, 1 in 4 people have disclosed having a disability of one type or another. We know that's actually a lowballed number because not everybody discloses. Innovation is at the heart of accessibility. Because when you are building for accessibility and you are innovating to come up with solutions, you're creating a better experience, not just for that person with a disability, but you're creating a better experience for everyone. And I'm going to give you a couple of different examples, or at least one example to start off with. Closed captioning. Closed captioning, the use case, the problem statement was to assist individuals who are deaf or hard of hearing. Closed captioning is mainstream now. Everybody uses closed captioning. I have 3 children. They all use it. I use it. My wife uses it. Everybody is utilizing it for different reasons. But again, the innovation there was for people who are deaf, hard of hearing. But again, when you build something accessible, you're building a great experience for everyone. The other thing I would say is as you're learning about accessibility, you're listening to this today, um, you can't solve accessibility overnight. You need to, again, based on your organization and your needs, build a plan. Don't boil the ocean. You will fail. By the way, even if you don't boil the ocean, you're going to fail along the journey, and that's okay. I do that probably on a daily basis around here working on accessibility, and I've been doing this for 11 years. So my only real suggestion about a good program is be honest, but be consistent. Consistency is really key to building out a good program. If you are going to measure X, Y, and Z, make that consistent. If you're going to test for one thing, make sure the methodology for your testing of that product or that service or that design, that you're using the same methodology and you are capturing how you're doing that. You obviously want to evolve just like anything else. You have to have measures in place to accurately capture. I was doing ABC. Now on this day, I moved to be ABCDE. It's about repetition. It's about documentation. It's about knowing the why and how and what are the expected outcomes. So I know I've talked a lot. I'm gonna take a break there, but again, it's a really exciting journey. And again, it's not just for the 1 in 4 people. It is truly for everybody.
Yeah, this is Kate. Thank you, Fred. And I think something that you mentioned, had me thinking. You said there's no single playbook, and I've seen that to be true, right? The work that we do at Teach Access is working with a lot of you, all of you here on this call and beyond. And there isn't a single thing that it's like, well, you must do it this way. And I've kind of in my mind that's sort of a parallel to what we were saying earlier about we all have come to this work from different backgrounds. And so I think as talking to faculty out there and educators, that's the part that for me I want to encourage you to continue to think of as you're working with students is that yes, there are some very core sort of accessibility technical standards, if you will, guidelines, of course, web content accessibility guidelines and so forth. There are things that are true, we know that about doing this work, but it's also that piece of we're all coming to it in different ways. And Fred, you mentioned a lot of roles within your company that you know that accessibility belongs and disability understanding, awareness, knowledge. And so I think that's an important thing for us to do with our students and keep in mind with our students is there's all sorts of ways to enter into this work and there's all sorts of ways to support it wherever you are. If you're at Verizon or Kelsey at ADP. So over to you for this question as well.
Sure. I mean, plus one to everything, to the idea of innovation, which I think is really, really powerful. And there's more stories to be told there, I think, to help leadership, in particular at large organizations, mid-sized organizations, understand what's possible. And then plus one to the inclusion of the disability community and everything. I think there's really no other way. And the innovation and lived experience are inextricably linked. So I think what I can add to this, especially kind of considering from an education standpoint. So I worked in higher ed for a while and focused on accessibility and assistive technology at the time. And looking back now, the goal at the time, this was over 10 years ago, which is so wild to say, was to upskill computer science, our developers, people who were going to be building products. And I'm kind of kicking myself for that at this point. Not because I don't think that was the right thing to do, but now existing in building, like my whole focus now is building from the ground up accessibility functions at large organizations. I wish I'd also focused significantly more on business because business holds finance, program and product management. It holds project management. It holds all of those pieces. And those are the folks that I spend a lot of time with, working to convince, working to bring along, working to build up capacity for, to help them understand their roles in all of this and how they make or break whether a dev focuses on that work or not. So yes, they need the technical skills, but they often don't. They're receiving their to-do items, right? So if we haven't shifted left even in our thought process of the who, it doesn't really get to the end. So I think that's probably what I can say from like, what is a good accessibility? What does that look like in practice? It means you know the right roles that need the right influence and upskill them quickly in the way that meets where they're at, and that they walk away fully understanding what their role requires and how to do that in the culture of your organization. And I think that means it comes back to what I think everybody here is saying around like outcomes, know your goals, and then the business side of this as well, right? A lot of us, again, don't come from like a particular area that necessarily landed us in corporate and accessibility specifically. I mean, I'm a speech pathologist by trade. That is not, of course, where I thought I'd be right here, right now. And some of the things that I don't have skills in, I've either had to acquire or I've been really lucky to build teams of people who have the skills that I don't have, which are things initially, especially like, I know we need these metrics. How do we capture those in the context of a product development lifecycle accurately, efficiently, effectively across all those roles? Because they'll all be different. And then how do we represent that data? And I think now I have people who are far more skilled at data analytics and kind of building those types of dashboards and insights and systems that are so integral to building a good accessibility program, and using that data to, again, going back to all those different roles that all have very critical facets of like necessity, being able to communicate the right information at the right time based on what their outcomes are needing to be. And then I think going to the AI conversation, right? So much of the work that's being done right now, again, is I'm spending a lot more time working with, there's my cat, working with business professionals around like operations and how we can use AI tools in our project management tooling, how the product development lifecycle or the AI development lifecycle now works, and ensuring that accessibility is a part of every single facet. From when you're conceptualizing what you want to do, is the AI trained to include accessibility automatically so it can't be skipped at each role. So I think there's a lot of what I'd sum it up in saying is that accessibility has to be obvious and apparent. It has to be integrated. It needs to be seen just as important as security, resiliency, reliability, all of that. And I think to Fred and everyone's point, when it's done poorly, the focus is compliance and your users still struggle. So it can't be smoke and mirrors, right? But yeah, this is an experience for everyone. So that's it.
Kelsey, thanks. This is Kate. Cats are always welcome. Pets are welcome. Houseplants, whatever you need to bring to the conversation, we welcome it. Thank you everybody for those insights. Before we move to our next question, just want to see if anyone has anything else they want to add or build on upon what anyone shared.
I do
No
want to add
pressure.
one thing, especially if I'm going to dovetail off of Kelsey, because I know we're talking about faculty and students, and that's such an important piece of running the future generation of employees, whatever the industry is going to be. And one of the things I think I'm going to take from a corporate perspective and apply it for students who are going to be in business. We're talking about business, either it be sales or whatever the business, maybe they're creating products. Couple things to remember just in practical. You can forget about the word accessibility for a second. You don't want to leave money on the table. You want to build a product and you want to reach your market share. You want to really create and drive services, maximize revenue opportunities, right? That's any of these type of business related, whether they're courses or, economics type of class. All those same principles now overlay accessibility. Accessibility helps drive, helps to not leave money on the table. It helps on the innovation. It helps on the product being bigger and better for whatever they need, services. So if you want to take, and look outside the word accessibility to everyday life, well, they are connected. So the purchase power of people with disabilities and caregivers is tremendous. And if you go with the simple concept of 1 in 4 people have a disability, and I'm just going to use that stat, do you really want to create a product that you're only going to reach 75% of your market share? Or do you want to create something to go for 100% of your market share? That's number one. Two, we want to talk about compliance. I've heard the word compliance a few times, which is really important. You do have a federal law here. You have the ADA, and it will cost you more money to retrofit whatever your product or service, widget, you name it, is to make it accessible. It will also destroy your brand if you're not accessible. And brand trust is really important in the marketplace. Okay. You want loyalty. You want to build loyalty, not just for 75% of your customer base, but your whole customer base. And I will leave you this one piece. In the accessibility world, when you do it well, the accessibility communities will let people know you did it well. On the flip side, if you don't do it so well, not only are they telling people in the accessibility communities, it is their family, their friends. So that word of mouth market research and buying power and so on and so forth, don't leave money on the table. Okay, I'm going to shut up.
This is Kate. That was Fred. That was so important to share with everybody, and I'm so glad that you added that piece. Kurt, did you want to add something there? Or
No, Fred's just taking
okay.
all our talking points. So
It's a panel of one. It's just Fred. No, I actually have one follow-up question for you, Kelsey. Just kind of building off of this one here. So, um, you mentioned having to develop additional skills as part of your accessibility work. So, in your experience, in your view, what accessibility-related knowledge and skills should computer science faculty and students be learning and developing? I'll go to you first, but anyone will be welcome to add on what they think, of course, after, yeah, Kelsey, just curious if there's anything you could add to that.
Yeah. So computer science faculty, I mean, students or faculty actually, they need to understand the disability experience. They need to understand how people use assistive technology, what that means in real life when it comes to navigating a digital space. Um, and I think they need to know what good looks like, and they need to know what bad looks like. And they need to really spend time with people who actually use assistive technology. I think like that entering this world was so incredible to have because as a speech path, that's all I did was really for many years set people up with assistive technology and make sure it worked for them and taught them how to advocate. And I learned so much. I'm an assistive technology user myself. And I think many people actually are assistive technology users and may not know it or think of it that way. But I think we all know what it's like to experience a lack of usability and how frustrating that is. And I think we all have a good sense of what a good, good user experience is like. So definitely that. I also feel like a huge skill that developers in particular and QAs really need to understand is how to advocate, how to push back, how to say, well, I know that's not right. I know that this is the right practice, and how to ask questions to get to the point that they're trying to make, and how to showcase the impact and why they know something is not the right play. But it's really hard to do that if you haven't done the first thing I said. So I think they really need to know how to do that without also blaming accessibility. I'm so tired of hearing well, we can't because of accessibility. Well, not really. It's like, it's not a good user experience is really what you're trying to say. So I think that's a huge piece too, how to appropriately have a conversation with, again, all of those intersecting roles, because product should run the show a little bit, right? And if you can't explain why something's not done or not moving or what you need to a designer or a product manager, you're kind of tough out of luck. Like, so, and you're about to create something horrific. So I think that's a huge piece. And I think it's also knowing enough to be dangerous of the other roles, like knowing enough to know when your product manager is ignoring adding accessibility defects to the backlog, knowing enough about when a designer has made a choice that is maybe not up to snuff. And really like, and also knowing how business works, like what Fred was getting at, right? Like, if you can make a case for something because you understand the financial impact, or you understand that letting XYZ slide is going to cost you in the long run, whether it's literally from a complaint, et cetera, or from debt, that's not positive. So I think those are three big things I would say I wish development and engineering had a far better adeptness at.
This is Kate. Kelsey, thank you for that. And I'm glad you made the connection to Fred's comments because we talk about in Teach Access that advocacy piece, and
Yeah.
maybe students won't come through programs either with faculty that we work with or themselves being experts at accessibility. But at least they know to advocate. And I think knowing who you're talking to really ties into a big part of that. And Fred rightly shared some of those things where it's like, just like you said, okay, well, if you're talking to this person, this is probably going to be the motivating thing that you can say that is advocacy that will land so that they will be like, yes, let's go. A plus for accessibility. I think Nandita, your hand was up first, so I'll go to you and then Kurt coming to you after that.
Yeah, just adding on a little bit and just sharing actually a student perspective of what worked, when faculty was teaching me about accessibility. And Kate, just refreshing my memory on your question. Your question was, what skills and knowledge should computer science faculty and students be learning and developing, right? Like, what are things that they need to first
That's right.
empower themselves with before then they can teach it, right? There's of course the critical knowledge piece. I would actually take a step back and make sure that they themselves understand the why and then they can teach that why. I shared a story from being like a TA, and it was an educational technology class. And I was like, oh, well, we're building systems that teach. We need to make sure the systems are accessible. And the professor's like, yeah, that's a great idea. You should teach that class. And I'm like, okay, I am this little lowly TA. I have not taught a class before, and you want me to teach a class on accessibility. All right, let's do this. So I spend 3 weeks preparing, end up in class and, just basically walk them through, the inclusive design toolkit, walk them through different perspectives on approaching how to design systems, think multimodal, think flexible, right? Think customizable, all this fun stuff. And then you get this question that said, I have to design for everyone. And I let that sink in for a second, right? The fact, and I had loved my professor's response, where my professor was like, the privilege with which you can say and ask that question whether you can have to design. Yes, you have to design for everyone, right? How would you feel if you were trying to fill out this form or learn this tool and it wasn't accessible to you? Yes, you have to design for everyone. And then what I loved next was this accountability based. So one of the things my professor did was, look, I hope you guys were paying attention to this class, because guess what? You will be judged as part of your grade, and you have to demonstrate at least one or two ways in which you have been intentional about accessibility. And you don't do it, this is an F. I'm not knocking off a grade point. You don't do it, it's an F, right? And it's one of those where, when, Kelsey, building on your point about advocacy, right? How we teach advocacy, how we learn, because in today's, in our corporate environment as a product manager, and you're right, like there are things I might not think of, and I absolutely expect design to question me. I absolutely expect development to question me, right? When we come up with a set of requirements, it's not a dictatorship. I go in my little corner, I'm like, oh, this is what you're going to build, here you go, build it. No, that's not how it works. It's absolutely cross functional. And if within within your computer science programs, if you're not teaching, and again, as someone who comes from HCI, compute like College of Computing is not just computer science. There's so many other degrees, like HCI sat as part of that. We had design, we had psychology, we had development, right? We had software developers. So you have so many different types of roles, if you will, that are going to be taking your class as a faculty. You have the power to not just influence a developer, you have the power to influence someone who might become a chief technology officer of a company. You might be influencing someone who's going to be leading a product, right? There's so much there, but making sure that they first understand the why. And of course, Fred talked about business impact, right? Kurt's talked about different levels and roles and how you bake it in. But making sure, like, just from a faculty perspective, that it's enforced. Because if you just otherwise it just turns into lip service. It's like, oh great, here are the skills I've learned, let me pass this on to you, great. But sometimes you have to ensure that how are you assessing, right? How are you even assessing the skills that you're teaching? Make sure you enforce those accessibility skills. And this could be, what are the different ways you're showing it? This could be, okay, you're a researcher, how did you make your research itself accessible? Did you provide alternative ways for someone to participate in this research study? Because that's where the barriers start. And now, in this ever changing world where we are using more and more AI tools, I mean, you're starting to see interviewing happening with AI tools. You might have an AI interviewer. Imagine if someone has a atypical speech pattern, and that stutter or that pattern is now misinterpreted as low confidence. Guess what? They're going to get screened out, right? So there's all these different facets, and the people who are building them, you as faculty, you have the power, you have the responsibility. Make sure you enforce that knowledge, right? Learn it, but enforce it. Make sure the students are understanding it. And that's in your power. After that, you can only lead the horse to water. Can't do anything else after that.
Kate, Nandita, that was amazing. I hope all the faculty were listening to that. Maybe we'll go back and rewind it so they can hear it again. Kurt, over to you.
So I will keep this shorter since we've only got through two questions and we're running out of time. I want to touch upon a few things that Kelsey said, where she was talking about accessible technology leads innovation. One of the things that often gets overlooked is some of the most basic things that we use every day were once accessible technology. Keyboards, typewriters started as accessible technology, voice to text, captioning. All these things are accessible technology, which are now used every day. In the accessibility space, we refer to this as the curb cut effect. Curb cuts being the end of the sidewalk that goes down to the street, originally designed for people who use wheelchairs. But if you think who uses it now, people pushing strollers. If you've got an armful of groceries, if you're carrying a couch and moving it up the stairs, you certainly don't want to step up a curb. So it's beneficial. The bottom line is that accessibility leads to innovation, which leads to benefiting everyone and benefiting society. On top of that, one of the things that we want you to focus on is, as you are learning and as you are developing, please, once again, spend time with people with disabilities. There are ARCs in most cities across the United States. Go into them, spend some time. They will, I've never seen anyone say, no, please don't come in and observe. They want you to come in. They want you to observe. They want you to work with those people, because then you'll go out and you'll build a more accessible society. I just spent some great time with Access Living in Chicago, and they're absolutely fantastic. And to build off what Nandita says, those alternative ways, by offering options, that is accessibility. One of the cool things in Access Living, they've got about 10 different types of places to sit down, depending on body type or what the people's abilities are. There's like 10 different types of chairs at Access Living, just because of options are accessibility. And this is where we need to build it into everything we do. It's not just a nice to have, kind of as Fred was saying, it's now a business imperative.
This is Kate. Absolutely. And thank you for bringing some of those other examples, Kurt, because When I am working with students and previously in my teaching career, sharing some of that, you could see students be like, wait a minute, that was because of accessibility first and disability? And it's like, yeah, you want to talk about innovation. Let's talk about accessibility in the disability community. I mean, living a daily life in a world not built for you, that's really where we see a lot of innovation. So thank you for bringing in some of those examples. I always think it's helpful. Okay, let me look at our list of questions here. We kind of got on one on what do we wish designers, developers would know. So let us go to, um, we've mentioned it. Okay, Rolando, thank you. Back behind the scenes adding questions here. So let me read this one out. What are some of the recurring accessibility issues that you believe developers or organizations often overlook? So again, we're thinking about recurring accessibility issues, things that it's like, come on, why are we here again? What 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 is this? So any thoughts there? And let me maybe go to Fred first on this one if you have ideas.
Funny, I wasn't going to say a word, so I figured it out. But no, I like this question a lot because it's multifaceted for people, and I really want to make sure that comes across. Um, this is a session for faculty and students, so they are going to learn. They're going to be more knowledgeable, and they'll have a little more experience going into everyday life. Let's talk about you being a developer. We run across many developers. A company at Verizon, we have developers that are what you call traditional onshore in the United States and then offshore or nearshore. Um, there are different cultures out there that have not embraced accessibility like we have here in the United States. And there are other cultures that have really embraced it more than we have done here in the United States. It's just factual. So there are developers that you will meet that they don't even know what accessibility is. And so we talk about leadership and advocacy. If you're listening to this, congratulations. You have now got a new title. You now are an advocate. So it's really your responsibility as a human being to share this message that says, here's what accessibility is if somebody does not know what it is. Okay. So that's like challenge one is just people aren't in the know. Challenge two is usually when you share what accessibility is, everybody usually has somebody in their family, their friend circle, or something that has one or more disabilities. And they relate then. And it becomes more of a human reaction, interaction. And they're like, oh, yeah, oh, so that could help so and so in my family. Or, you know, it, part of this is a conversation, tie it together. The other is, it's too hard. I hear that all the time. That aggravates me. It's not too hard. There are tools, there are best practices out there, there are guidelines from a digital accessibility perspective for developers of how you go and do something. Okay. Typically, when it's like it's too hard, it's because you have to go remediate something because you did not take care of it up front in the beginning. If you're doing something up front in the beginning from a development perspective, and I used to be in IT, never a developer, but was in IT. This is no different than any other protocol that you have to follow as you are creating HTML, you're building an app, leveraging like an STK. It's there. What happens a lot of times is people don't realize about the requirement. They forget about, they don't add it. So that is truly for a message for developers is now you know, so now you must do. And by the way, if you're listening in the United States, for example, it's the law. So I know we like to do things because of law. So sometimes the compliance factor comes into these conversations to help sometimes motivate people. But then again, I will say I will lean on the heartstrings of people being human here. Um, why don't you just do it because it's the right thing to do? That's my message.
This is Kate. Thanks, Fred. And I like that you congratulated everyone for now being an advocate. I always like one of my favorite things to say is like, once you know about it, you can't unknow it. So what are you going to do with that knowledge? You don't have to be an accessibility full-time professional, but you know that it's a thing. So how does that factor into your day to day at that point? So I really appreciate that perspective. I think Nandita, anything you'd like to add here, and then we'll go Kurt and Kelsey.
And just to recap, the question is, what are the recurring issues that we
That's
are
right.
seeing,
Yep,
the
that's right.
developers
Recurring
and
issues.
organization? I know I mentioned this one with, trying to bolt it on with audits, right? Where we might try to catch things afterwards. I'll actually spin this around a little bit and touch on actually AI, right? So I know a lot of companies out there and organizations are starting to use AI as part of their workflows, as part of, like, how do I make my work faster, quicker, or make my products more accessible, right? Making sure that we're looking at, I think one of the biggest recurring issues is again assuming that it's going to be right and assuming that the output is going to be accessible by default. Joe Devin and the AMAP team are doing a lot of great work around this on being able to benchmark and study, right, what the Gen AI outputs look like, right? Like how accessible are they, things like that. So making sure that, and again, putting on the hat from the students, faculty who might be watching it, of course, like you have to teach your students the skills to go out into the workforce so they can be knowledgeable on these AI tools and capabilities, but making sure that they understand the caveats and the constraints are super, super important, right? Instead of just saying, oh, yeah, I'm going to go to Codex or Cursor and build my little accessibility scale and then ask, my prototype in Figma to run through it. And yeah, it's given me this list. It's great. It's done. I don't need a person to review it. AI looked at it. I gave it all my guidelines. I'm sure it's right. No, you can't assume that. So make sure that when this piece of the knowledge is coming through, right, and you're like teaching that, I think this is one that I worry about that we might overlook is assuming that it's absolutely going to be right. And the other one that actually, Fred, something you said with the intersectionality piece really triggered it for me. A lot of times what happens is, again, and this is not just organizations, but I've seen this with developers too, we assume everyone just has the one disability. Like, of course, it's not possible that this person who's blind could also be using some other assistive technology or might have a mobility issue. Of course not. It only has to be one or the other, right? No, no, absolutely not. Making sure that we understand that intersectionality piece where you might have multiple disabilities that go into play, and that completely changes the user experience. So when we just try to put people in buckets to say, okay, this is what I've done for my screen reader users, this is what I've done for my voice AI users, this is what I've done for my mobility users, right? Like making sure that we can truly look at it from, okay, I'm a human, I have multiple ways of interacting with the system, and those change depending on what my circumstances are. How would I still use this product? How would I still use this service? So making sure that we even just like I know Fred mentioned the compliance piece, and that's important, right? Because sometimes you need the hammer or you need the stick, right? Like I would throw whatever I can at it, right? Like you use different tools. But even just from a computer science student perspective, right? Like trying to be empathetic here, right? Developers don't want to build something that no one's going to use. Of course, they want their product to be used. They want people to love it, right? Teaching it from a place where this is what's going to get people to love it, right? Make sure everyone who has this whole range of human abilities can use this and they're going to love it. So making sure that they just understand, because again, going through college and learning about this, sometimes we do put folks in the box that, oh, okay, I just need to check for a screen reader, I need to check for a keyboard, and I'm done, right? Maybe we didn't even check haptic. Maybe we didn't even check touchscreen. We didn't even check, is it too heavy where someone could even pick it up? Like, are we assuming that this tablet can be picked up with one hand and be operated with one hand, right? There's so many other constraints that go into mind. So making sure that just that input piece is looked in a different way, because I've seen that overlooked a lot in just how someone would use a product. And it's not about checklists, but
This is Kate. Thank you, Nandita. And again, that your answer really underscores what one of the threads of this conversation has been is make sure that disabled people, disability community is at the table, is part of it, are on our teams. They're in, make sure that it's not just, oh, that one group over there that we sometimes have to talk to. No, every step of the way. Because that's when you really start to build this broader understanding if you are new to this space that, like you said, it's not just one person has one disability. There are people who have multiple disabilities, and what does that look like? And the effect it has on products and services we're building. Kurt, over to you.
So I have to just state right off the bat that being a binary thinker and listening to Nandita talk about putting people in buckets and boxes, it was just like I started thinking about all the cartoons that could be drawn from Nandita, just like stuffing people in buckets. But I know her well enough to know that she does not actually put people into buckets, so it's nice to know. But accessibility, I think one of the big things right off the bat is as I talk to my customers, and as stated, I work in tech, and Salesforce tech is a little different than most tech, where most tech is you buy a product and there it is, and you install it or whatever it needs to be. It's kind of what it is out of the box. For Salesforce, you use our products and you shape it the way you need it. We're really a problem solving solution. Um, and so often I talk to my customers and they're like, okay, what do I need to do to make it accessible? Or where in the process do we work on accessibility? And I have to remind them that accessibility, it's not a finish line, it's not a checkbox. There's no like, okay, we're done, we're accessible, let's walk away now. It's it's this thing that we need to constantly iterate as technology evolves, as people learn more about various disabilities. Accessibility is kind of a moving line. There's never going to be a done. There's never going to be a finished. So it's one thing that needs to be looked at and constantly thought of. And we really need to be very intentional as we design for it, as we build for it, as we test for it. All of these things need to be part of those processes. Um, Another um, aspect that is often overlooked, and I know it was touched upon previously, is sometimes accessibility is viewed as this like monumental boulder that can't be tackled because there's so many things we need to look at and so many aspects. And what I always say to my customers is just get started. Like, don't worry about getting everything right all the time, right the first time, because no matter what, as much as you try, you're not going to get everything right. Um, think of it as like being in the ER. Go in, triage, see what needs to be happened, focus on the big items, and then work your way down to the smaller ones, or maybe even focus on the easy ones first. Whatever it takes to do, just start doing it. That's really my best advice for anyone who says, I want to start thinking about accessibility. I'm like, cool, do it. Like right now, you're thinking about accessibility. Just keep going. We must be intentional. And all of those things are vastly important. Is once again, just to summarize, it's never done, and please get started immediately. Those are the ways that we can avoid recurring accessibility issues is by doing those simple things.
Ms. Kurt, thank you for those reminders. I say similar things, so I think this is the way of the accessibility work. We know we're never done, and today is the best day to get started if you haven't started yet. All right, Kelsey, over to you for any other things you might want to add
Sure.
around recurring accessibility issues. Then we'll have one more official question and then one kind of closing thing. So just so everyone knows where we're headed, but Kelsey, any other recurring issues you'd like to chat
Yeah.
about?
So I took this very literally at first, and was like, oh yeah, recurring accessibility violations, blah, blah, blah. And I will get to that, but also one more broad kind of thing I was thinking about as everyone was talking was, um, and especially thinking through the computer science education lens, please teach your developers that addressing the not sexy things is just as important as addressing the fancy, shiny things. I think that's something I've learned over the years is that debt piles up from an accessibility standpoint because developers, if there's not a solid product development relationship, which can really happen a lot, which is why I'm like harping so hard on please get your developers better social skills to interact with their teams and vice versa for product managers. I think debt piles up when developers kind of go rogue and decide, I don't want to do the boring alt text button labeling thing 100,000 times because we've seen that violation repeatedly. I want to go build this new AI workflow situation, or I want to go do this other thing that's going to have a lot of really important for developers to learn that consistency is key, consistency is king, but also it's critical to do your job well so you don't have to do all of that, but that's also part of it. And you get what you get, you can't get upset. So I think like that's one thing that I would definitely say is like make sure people know that your job isn't just building new things, it's also clean up of the things that you may have failed to do, or someone else failed to do. And then I think going back to the very literal interpretation I took, and I think Nandita talked a little bit about this from the audit perspective. I'll talk bigger picture about this. It's important for developers, product managers, designers, leadership to understand what an accessibility conformance report is because they need to understand why that happens, how that impacts sales, how that impacts just also metrics. I know a lot of folks in organizations, especially when they're just starting their journey, they pump out accessibility conformance reports from a compliance perspective because they know they're being asked for them, but they don't consider how that can significantly drive metrics for them. They don't use those metrics to make decisions or look at how they can scale. So, for example, if you've had a series of accessibility conformance reports over several years, that's so much data to start looking at pattern recognition and start saying, wow, we're really noticing that every year our top three issues are heading structure, button labels, and alt text, which I'm probably saying because those are frequently what I see everywhere. And so if you don't know that, you're not empowered to specifically train on that. You're not empowered to use linting tools to block the build for some of those very small issues, ultimately, issues that should not be complicated to execute on effectively. You can block the build for that. If you know what those issues are, start blocking your build. You do it for security, you do it for resiliency, you do it for all these other things. Accessibility is no different. So I think we also need organizations to start leveraging metrics in ways that can drive high impact outcomes. Yeah, and also developers really deeply need to understand what tools can and cannot do.
This is Kate. Kelsey, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Just so many amazing gems that have come out of this conversation. Everyone's always like, "That's a cool thing. I should put that on a t-shirt." I now have about 50 t-shirts that I have to make after this conversation. Okay, we are closing in on sort of the end of this chat here. There's one sort of official question I'll ask around a little something called AI that has already been talked about, but that we all are hearing about every day. So I'll ask that in a moment. But one thing that I want to just kind of put on your radars, I want to offer each of you a moment when we get to the end to offer a closing comment or a closing word of encouragement. And it would be what word or words of encouragement might you give faculty to get started in teaching or keep teaching if they are about accessibility. So think about what might you say. It could be encouragement, it could be whatever, call to action, whatever you want to call it. But what would your closing message to faculty be about teaching? So you can have that for a moment to think through while we get this next AI question loaded up here. All right. Okay. So we've heard about AI a little bit. In this conversation. You're hearing about it a lot out there. But sort of our question for you today is what role does AI play in improving and or potentially complicating accessibility? And I think with this one, how about you raise your hands and I'll call on you. That way, if someone has something ready to go, we can go that way. And I'll just go in the order of hands going up. So, what role does AI have in improving or potentially complicating? And I think Kurt, your hand went. Then I saw Kelsey's, Fred's, Nandita's. I think that's our order. So, Kurt, to you first.
Cool. I win. Um, if anybody's seen me speak about AI, I use this analogy all the time. AI is a tool. And just like any tool, they have a specific use and a specific purpose. I think about those old information infomercials in the 90s and 2000s where Billy Mays was just slapping things on to fix leaks. And I think about AI so often, the corporate leads that are just like, I'm going to slap some AI on it. We'll be good. Like we've got business problems. Psh, slap some AI on it. It doesn't really work that way. And AI is that tool. It has that specific use and a specific purpose. If I call a plumber and they show up with a hammer, I'm going to fire them immediately because there are other tools that I want my pipes being worked on other than just a hammer. Please don't show up as that. So we have that potential to be that game changer for people with disabilities. AI could be the most brilliant tool for people with disabilities and accessibility, but are we using it with accessibility in mind? Are we building with accessibility in mind? Has it been tested by people with disabilities? Are we focusing on the real benefit to humanity, or are we just slapping it on things? So that's kind of my quick spiel about AI and how it can be really, really beneficial for accessibility, but at the same time, it can be completely harmful. Use it with intention, build it with intention, test it with intention.
This is Kate. Kurt, thank you. And that is an excellent visual image that I have. And I've always wondered if that stuff actually worked. If anyone out there has used it, let me know. To stop a leak. Kelsey, I think you were next. Is that right? Am I remembering? Yeah.
I think so. I'm going to take a slightly different approach with this because I wrote a series recently on AI because I've been really fascinated in AI, not necessarily in the how are we using AI to build products, but in like stepping like into the macro heavily and thinking about how are we using AI as part of systems. And so um, I think one of the facets of this that would be really helpful for students in particular is to understand that I think we know, or we should know, they should know that AI can amplify good and it can amplify real bad stuff, and that context really matters. So if you are approaching using AI in your product development lifecycle, you really have to understand the context of the system you're working in to appropriately feed it information. And the micro is really important, but what I'm finding a lot of people struggling with is conceptualizing to get a really solid output, conceptualizing the whole and then breaking it down into parts and providing context to then understand what your problem really is that you're asking it to help you solve. And so I think the executive functioning piece is really important, and I would really recommend spending a lot of time having students conceptualize AI as part of systems. Where does it fall in? How does it fall in? Who's involved at different junctures? What are the risks? What are the opportunities? Examples of what you're trying to achieve, and examples of what you're not trying to achieve, and helping students craft that in literal conversation with AI, because the one thing that AI is I think Nandita talked about this, it's going to give you a lot of positive feedback, and it's going to not necessarily challenge you unless you really lean in to ask it to, or unless you challenge it. And so I think we kind of get into this overconfidence, underskilled place of things, which I'm seeing run rampant everywhere. So the more that we can build critical thought, yes, but also build systems understanding to drive appropriate holistic use of AI from a macro standpoint to then really address micro understanding of where it fits is very critical. So that's what I'll add to that.
This is Kate. Thank you, Kelsey. And I really enjoyed reading what you were sharing about AI in that series when you were posting about that.
Thanks
So
for
yeah, thank you for bringing that in. Fred, you're up.
All right, I'm gonna look at this from kind of two very different lenses underneath the AI umbrella. First is let's talk about from the everyday use and then doing more with it. So the principles of AI are really no different than what we do on a daily basis for the last, in my case, 50 years. And I'll give you a great example. You have most people know what Snapchat is, right? And you had Snapchat, it was built, it was rolled out, you loved it, and you said, wow, I wish they would build off this and build and add filters for pictures or location and so on and so forth. So think of AI as that. You built it the one hand, you have a foundation where that agent is. And then you're like, oh, I want it to do more. That's no different than what we do in everyday life. You get a product, you want it to do more. Take an Xbox or a PlayStation, the iterations of those over the years. Conceptually, it's the same thing when we're talking about AI. As you're going through the development, you as an individual creating an AI agent, whatever it may be from an AI perspective, you want to test what you're doing now. Is it working with how I want it to work? Am I getting the results? It is that, verification, that user acceptance testing, quality assurance testing, you name it. Those principles are the same as what we're talking about everyday applications. Again, Snap, Facebook, your mobile app that you're using for banking, add it in, it's the same thing. So that's one concept. So that's where you can see some good and where you need to build off its same principles. The other side is everybody learns differently. And there are people that have cognitive neuro issues and some that don't. But those principles, what AI is bringing to the table, is again innovative, working for everyone. If you're taking a simple Google document, Microsoft Word document, Excel spreadsheet, Google Sheets. Okay, you pick the platform, pick the product. AI is helping people learn in ways they weren't able to do. It is summarizing lots of information for someone who cannot digest all that all at once. It is providing transcription services for a meeting like this today that can take all of it, summarize it to help the individual learn. So there is the pros and cons of AI, and I'm not going to be the one who says there isn't. But when we're looking at it from both products, we're talking about faculty and students, it's all there. And once again, as I started earlier today, accessibility is all about all these different things. Every walk of life, accessibility is part of it. And now AI is too. So I think there's just a lot of good fun out there. But again, just like everything else, you got to trust your sources. You got to verify your sources. That is no different than before AI was out or the internet was out. You got a newspaper, you got an opinion columnist. It's an opinion, not fact. Same thing with AI on certain scenarios, depending on the sources. And you have the power to update those sources. You have the power to reprompt it. So do it the right way.
Okay, thanks, Fred. And yeah, I think that being a critical user of any technology, user and or creator of any technology is key. And just like you're saying, AI is no different. And I think that speaks to what Kelsey was saying around the how does it fit in the overall system. Okay, Nandita, you'll get the last word, at least today, on AI for this group.
I love it. And again, like plus one to everything that was said. I'll dive in a little bit deeper, given that both Kelsey, Fred, and Kurt have given systemic organizational approaches. My lens is again coming from a senior PM who's working on the products using these AI tools and technically building AI tools for others in the organizations. So one, I'll start with the happy. Let's start with the happy. We'll sandwich this. So, Kate, with your question, right? What role does AI have in improving or complicating accessibility? Improving, I mean, as someone with intersectional disabilities myself, personal examples, it's always a pain to type, it's always a pain to read. I term myself as neurospicy as well. So I'm like, okay, I don't have time to read this big blob of text. Let me summarize. Right? Summarization is one example, but we've really seen AI make so many things that took a lot of time, right? And now they're becoming a game changer. So if you think about the Ray-Ban Meta glasses that can, describe the world around you, or you look at just the AirPods that can technically function a little bit closer to a hearing aid, right? Like everyday technology that is now getting transformed and really changing this concept of assistive technology from this other thing that you have to use to, okay, this is tools and technology and services that we all can use, and it's inclusive for everyone. So I have hope. I like to believe I'm a very hopeful, happy person. I'm like, you know what? I have hope that AI is going to be used for good. We're already starting to see the benefit behind that. We're starting to see that just the way people learn. I mean, reading, the WCAG standards line by line, detail by detail, can be really complicated. It can be very overwhelming. When I was new to the industry, I mean, as faculty, if you're teaching this to students, that can be scary. That can be really overwhelming. They're like, oh my gosh, how am I going to remember all of this? But if you have a good AI tool that could easily teach you, summarize, it's revamping learning, right? So the way people even learn about accessibility, I like to hope, will change and it'll get better. I really have hope it'll get better. However, how does it complicate? One example that comes to mind, and I was watching one of these webinars with the Anthropic CEO, these other AI leaders, AI leadership summit, and they made this statement. They said 5 years from now, 95% of the code written out on the internet will be written by AI. Let that sink in for a second. 5 years from now, 95% of the code that exists out of the internet will be written by AI. That is such a bold statement. To me, my brain went, that is such a scary statement. Think of all the work we've done in accessibility to remove the barriers. And now you're going to have barriers created at scale because of what tools like Cursor, Claude, Codex can do, because you can now build and ship code so quickly and you can create those barriers quickly. And so my other analogy for this, the way I look at this is, if you look at the traditional product development lifecycle today, uh, pre-AI, I'm going to say pre-AI, post-AI, right? You do your research, work with researchers, then go to design, work with design, come up with the design requirements, then go over to engineering, work with engineering on translating these. Then you go back to QA, you test it, retest it, certify it, ship it. Something could take 3 to 6 months, especially complicated projects. Now, with AI condensing that, which is great, we can ship impact faster. But it's also scary because now you can run 1,000 miles an hour in the opposite wrong direction. And you can ship it very quickly. And you can ship inaccessibility and exclusion at scale. That, to me, is concerning. That is complicating accessibility, and that worries me. I mean, this is the stuff that keeps me up at night, y'all. And so, from a very actionable perspective, because I don't want to leave you with all the, oh my God, this is scary, this is a terrible world. No, we all have the power to make that change. But as we are getting intentional, like just understanding the nuances, because as Kurt mentioned, AI is just a tool, right? At the end of the day, it's just another tool. What is not going to change is we fundamentally, as humans, we're not going to change. My mobility disability isn't just going to disappear because this other magic tool showed up on the market. It's not. I'm going to navigate through my world with my challenges, with my human abilities, and that's not going to change. So making sure that we first off don't lose sight of the fundamentals. Don't ask AI to do your research for you, right? Like don't lose sight of the fundamentals. Who are you building for? You're building for people. Make sure you keep people in the loop. Now, if you want to use AI to help summarize those results or bring it together, speed up the process, make it efficient, go for it. But don't lose sight of the fundamentals of what we do and why we do it, and understand the nuances. I mean, Kelsey, I'll go back to one thing you said in the beginning of this talk, where we've all been evergreen learners. We've all had to upskill and learn, right? I mean, for me, coming from engineering to HCI and design to now accessibility, it's always been a path of learning. And even with AI, this is going to be a path of learning for all of us. This is new to all of us, and we all have to learn. We have to understand the constraints because without that, no one is going to understand why it's not doing it, right? It's really easy to blame the tool, say it's inaccessible. Well, why is it inaccessible, right? Because there's context, and it's inaccessible because the right data set wasn't added. Giving you a direct example from my day-to-day and work I do, I work with like voice AI and language AI and agents, and looking at ways in which we can successfully use different AI models to make collaboration experiences easier. Let's take this meeting, for example. I am speaking in English. If there are other users, including me, that might be using closed captions, they might be following the captions in their language. Now, if I start speaking in Hindi, अब मैं हिंदी में बात कर रही हूँ और आपको समझ में आ रहा है मैं क्या कह रही हूँ? All I said was, I'm speaking in Hindi, and can you understand what I'm saying? If it didn't directly translate, right, all of a sudden the meaning was lost. I feel I have a translator in my head all the time because my mother tongue is Hindi. So I'm always translating in my head into, Hindi, like into English or some other language. And so when we start thinking about these experiences, right, for everyone on the call, how could I show up authentically to just speak my own language, but for you to also follow along? Maybe it directly translated into English. Maybe the ASR actually just switched, right? The language engine just automatically switches and goes to the right language. How do you ensure it does it without bias? How do you ensure a male voice works as effectively as a female voice? How do you ensure if I was coughing, hacking, and took a deep breath, drank some water, long pauses, and kept going, would it still work? Right? And now you apply this to speech translation. There's so many other things. So these are things that, at least to me, right, the spaces I work in, we're constantly thinking of, are we making sure those right data sets are being used to train the model? So the output is effective. So making sure when you're teaching the good and bad about AI, right, we teach the constraints because it's not bad because it's evil or what have you. It's bad because it's trained to be bad, right? It's fixable, but we have to know how to fix it.
Nandita, thank you. And thank you, everybody. I mean, we could do another few hours on this, right? That was so incredible. And I know we are at our time here. So if anyone does need to go, please do what you need to do. We're so grateful for you spending time with us today. I do still want, if you have a few seconds, to close with this idea, this word of encouragement, or thinking about what does the future, when we're thinking about accessibility, look like, and what might be some parting words you would want to provide to faculty, whether related to what we've talked about here, there is a lot, or just something else, and maybe keep it as short as you can. Just a little sort of something for faculty to hold on to. So again, I can't thank you all enough. But let's see, parting words, maybe Kurt, do you have any ready that you'd like to share with
I
faculty?
do. One sentence. One conversation about accessibility can change how someone builds for the rest of their career.
Oof, I love that. Thank you, Kurt. Kelsey, do you have one ready?
I have four quick things. From working in higher ed to being where I am now, one, students need practice, like practical application of this, not theoretical, what's this vocab, what's this? No, get them practicing. Two, partner as a university with your local businesses. No one needs help with accessibility more than small business in your local community. Reach out. That's your practical experience. Have them do a project. Get that widget off that small business's site and get their site in a better space. They can't afford AI either. So what a great opportunity for the hands-on practice. Three, partner with your business school if you have one. Partner with your finance. Partner with whoever is doing your project management at your university. If those functions exist, partner with them and bring it together to make this whole product development lifecycle real for your students. They do not operate as a singular developer floating in space. And then four, practice what you preach. If your class is not accessible to a blind developer, I don't know what you're doing. So, and please don't fight anyone. If you have a student with a disability in your class, you of anyone should be ensuring that that class is welcoming to them. That's all.
Kelsey, thank you. My t-shirt collection is growing now after this. Nandita, any closing quick comments from you?
Make accessibility fun. I mean, this is such a special group. So actually have exciting news I wanted to share because I have had this thought in the back of my mind, actually, since I was still a student, that why is accessibility so complicated? Why is it so scary? And you as faculty have the power to change that perception, right? Make it fun, make it exciting, make it empathetic. And I actually wrote a book about it that comes out in September. So sharing that link in the chat with folks, but it's an illustrated graphic novel. So it's also about quick, easy, flip the page, you learn something new. What are the ways that you can build it in everyday life? So I would just say start small, right? Like that is my biggest thing. Don't overwhelm your students. Just make sure that they can understand it in bite-sized application pieces. And plus one, Kelsey, to what you said, I am someone who learned through hands-on kinetic learning. With Georgia Tech, we always had faculty and we had industries that brought the projects in. So as faculty, right, reach out. I put my hand up. I'll connect you to other companies. If I don't have a project for you, I promise you I will try and connect you. And I'm sure everyone on this call will also raise their hand. I don't want to speak for them, but I definitely raise my hand if you're looking for projects. I've done that a lot with Georgia Tech. I know I also partner with University of Washington here in Seattle. So wherever you're from, if you need projects, always happy to mentor and always here.
Nandita, thank you so much. Exciting news about your book. And Fred, last word of encouragement for our faculty.
I would say write a book. I mean, how do you go better than that? No, excuse me. Here's what I'm going to say is, remember, everything that we're talking about, even though we're talking about technology and AI and tech in general, it all goes back to humans and human experiences. And with all human experiences, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to trip. You're going to fall. You're going to have great intentions to do something the right way, and it's not going to work. And guess what? It's okay. Mistakes happen. Learn from those mistakes. I think the best thing I can tell everybody is, Nandita, you said the right way. Have fun with this. This does not have to be the most serious discussion in terms of the presentation of it. Have fun with it. When you're having fun with your staff and your students, they're going to enjoy this conversation even more. So don't make it dry. Don't make it a compliance conversation. Have fun with it. And I will say this. I'll raise my hand this way. There are no silly questions. I tell my team all the time. I go to you because you are the experts, the ones that are on my team every day. I ask dumb questions every day. They tell me, oh, they're not dumb. No, I know they are, and that's okay. I'm going to raise my hand. I'm going to check my ego out the door and say, I know it is, but I need help because I want to do what's right. I want to try to move the needle. So if you are in a position where you think it's a silly question, trust me, nobody's asked a sillier question than I am. So Kate can give you my information. I will jump on a call with you. I will answer an email. I will even Zoom into one of your classes if that helps you out. And there is no charge for that. It's just me wanting to do it because spreading the word. You're all advocates now. Have fun with it, and thank you for your time today.
Amazing. Thank you, Fred. Thank you, Nandita. Thank you, Kurt. And thank you, Kelsey. Again, my phrases to put on a t-shirt, I've lost count how many at this point. There's just been so much valuable information shared, insights, um, ideas that you've given for faculty on what they could be doing in their teaching. So thank you so much for spending this time today. We're excited to keep the conversation going with all of you, and of course, you all know the work that we're doing with faculty, so we'll be excited to keep you posted on that. And as a few of you have mentioned, I know you're willing to be connected with faculty as they're getting into that. So happy to keep that going as well. So again, can't thank you all enough. Um, I hope that you have a great rest of your day, and we look forward to seeing you again in a fun environment. Accessibility is fun. Maybe that'll be the first t-shirt that we make. Thank you all again so much.
Thank you.